The courthouse steps feel like a stage beneath my feet as I watch my mother's perfect composure finally crack. She's staring at the judge with disbelief, her manicured hands gripping the table edge so tightly her knuckles have turned white. Beside her, my father slouches with the defeated posture of a man who spent decades avoiding confrontation only to find it waiting for him at the end anyway. And Melissa, my dear cousin Melissa, with her designer clothes and Instagram perfect life, is sobbing uncontrollably, mascara streaking down her face as she wails about losing her home. Given the evidence presented today, the judge's voice cuts through the courtroom. I'm freezing all assets pending investigation. Mrs. Reynolds, you'll need criminal defense counsel. My name is Olivia Reynolds, and 3 weeks ago, I thought I had my life figured out. Now I'm watching my family's carefully constructed house of cards collapse from a fraud investigation I set in motion. The inheritance tampering, the illegal rental unit, the mortgage fraud, all of it exposed because they made one crucial mistake. They stole my home and thought I would just accept it. As we file out of the courtroom, my mother catches my eye, mouthing please over and over. For a moment, something stirs in me, that old conditioned response to fix things, to make peace, to put others before myself. It's been my role for as long as I can remember. The practical one, the responsible one, the one who understands that family comes first. But today, something else wins out. Something that feels dangerously like self-respect. I turn away. For 30 years, I've been told I needed to be stronger, more practical, less dramatic. Today, they're learning exactly how strong I've become. Outside, Melissa's tearful tirade is already being live streamed to her followers. My own family betraying me. She sobs into her phone camera, carefully angling it to catch her best side despite the distress. Everything I've worked for gone. Uncle Robert approaches, his steady presence a comfort. Your Aunt Elizabeth would be proud, he says quietly. She always said you had her spirit. I watch my mother being consoled by her lawyer, wondering when exactly she decided I was less deserving than Melissa. Was it from birth? Was there ever a moment when she looked at me with the same adoration she showed my cousin? Are you okay? Uncle Robert asks, studying my face. I'm not sure, I answer honestly, but I will be. 5 weeks earlier, the sold sign stabbed into the front lawn of my condo like a knife to the heart. I blinked hard, pressing my fingertips against my eyelids until stars burst behind them, certain I was hallucinating from exhaustion. The major design project I'd been working on for weeks had finally wrapped today. I'd even allowed myself a rare moment of professional pride on the drive home. That feeling evaporated the instant I saw the cruel red and white sign marking my home as someone else's property. This can't be happening, I whispered, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. The logical part of my brain tried desperately to make sense of it. I'd been renting this condo from my parents for 3 years with the clear understanding that I'd eventually buy it. I'd paid market rent religiously, maintained the property meticulously, and had been saving for a down payment, a goal I was finally approaching after years of building my freelance graphic design business. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my phone, nearly dropping it as I dialed my mother. Straight to voicemail, of course. The tight, controlled voice of Evelyn Reynolds instructed me to leave a message, promising a return call at her earliest convenience. I almost laughed at the irony. Nothing about my mother had ever been convenient, especially not for me. I stood there, in the fading light of late afternoon, feeling suddenly like a stranger on my own property. The garden I'd cultivated, herbs and flowers I'd planted with my own hands last spring, seemed to look at me accusingly as if I'd betrayed them somehow. The porch light I'd installed myself flickered on automatically with the timer I'd programmed. All these little pieces of myself, embedded into a space that had just been sold out from under me. Hey there, cousin. The sickeningly sweet voice froze me in place. I turned slowly to see Melissa Davis standing at the edge of my driveway, designer purse swinging from her elbow, blonde hair perfectly styled despite the humid summer air. Her smile gleamed white and predatory. Guess who just bought her first home? What are you talking about? The words came out choked, though I already knew the answer. A memory flashed, my 10th birthday party, Melissa opening my presents first because she's visiting, my mother beaming as she unwrapped the art set I'd been hinting at for months. Aunt Evelyn and Uncle James gave me such an amazing deal. I mean, they practically gifted it to me. Melissa twirled a set of keys, my keys, around her finger. I can't wait to renovate. This place needs so much work. I stared at her, unable to process her words. The garden beds I'd planted by hand, the kitchen backsplash I'd installed myself last summer, the fresh paint on every wall, all dismissed as insufficient in a single careless sentence. You had no right, I finally managed to say, the words coming out more fragile than I intended. Melissa's smile faltered, just for a second. Something almost like guilt flickered across her face before being replaced by the superior expression I knew so well. It's a business decision, Olivia. Aunt Evelyn said you weren't really serious about buying it anyway. She adjusted her purse strap, a nervous habit I recognized from childhood. Besides, with my new position at the bank, I need to establish myself properly. First impressions matter in finance. The implication was clear. Her career mattered. Her needs mattered. Mine were, as always, secondary. I've been saving for the down payment. I've been paying rent for 3 years. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, as if someone else was speaking. There was an agreement. Melissa shrugged, already scrolling through her phone. Nothing in writing. That's what Aunt Evelyn said. Anyway, I'm thinking sage green for the living room. What do you think? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My feet were already moving, carrying me away from her, away from the home I'd thought was becoming mine. 3 blocks to my parents' colonial-style home where I'd grown up always feeling slightly inadequate. As I approached, I noticed the basement windows glowing faintly, their illegal apartment, the secret income source they'd maintained for 15 years without permits or inspections. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her silver blonde hair perfectly styled, not a wrinkle in her cream blouse despite the late hour. I assumed you'd come, she said, stepping aside. Your father's in his study. The house smelled like fresh coffee and betrayal. I'd smelled that particular combination many times growing up, when my art school acceptance letters mysteriously disappeared, when my college fund somehow became Melissa's college fund, when every achievement I managed was met with "that's nice," while Melissa's participation trophies warranted celebration dinners. I walked through the immaculate living room, noticing how nothing ever changed here. The same carefully arranged furniture, the same tasteful artwork, none of it personal, all of it selected to create an impression of success and stability. My mother had been a respected realtor in Boston for over 30 years, and our home had always been her best advertisement. How could you sell my home without telling me? My voice cracked as I burst into Dad's study. I felt 16 again, pleading my case to his averted gaze. I live there. We had an agreement. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes, shuffling papers on his desk like they contained the secrets of the universe. His shoulders slumped under his cardigan, the posture of a man who'd long ago surrendered his backbone to maintain domestic peace. Family helps family, Mom said, perching on Dad's desk. Her voice held the practiced smoothness of a real estate professional who'd closed countless deals. Melissa needed a starter home, and she has such potential with her new job at the bank. The unspoken comparison hung in the air. Unlike you with your unstable freelance work, I've been paying rent for 3 years. We had an agreement that I would buy it. The memory of countless conversations confirming this plan flashed through my mind. All those times my mother had nodded and said, of course, eventually, while apparently never meaning a word of it. Nothing was in writing, Dad mumbled, still studying his papers. James. Mom snapped. Let me handle this. She turned to me, her face carved from ice. You'll have 30 days to vacate. Melissa's being very generous about the timeline. Generous? I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign. Like you were generous letting me believe I had a future there? Don't be dramatic, Olivia. Mom sighed with practiced martyrdom. You're almost 30. It's time you learned that nothing in life is guaranteed. I stared at them, really stared. Mom perfectly coy and cold as always, Dad hiding behind his papers like a coward, the basement door slightly ajar where their tenant probably heard everything. All those years of family helps family suddenly crystallized into their true meaning. Family helps Melissa. You're right, I said quietly. Nothing is guaranteed. As I walked out, I noticed again how the basement lights cast eerie shadows on the lawn. The illegal unit my father had constructed himself, with electrical work he'd done without permits, against multiple building codes. An income source they'd hidden for years while letting me struggle to make rent payments to them. Something cold and resolute settled in my chest. Flashback childhood. Hold still, Olivia. My mother's voice held a rare note of pride as she straightened the blue ribbon pinned to my dress. At 12, I'd won first place in the state art competition, my watercolor landscape beating out hundreds of entries from students several years older. You have a special talent, the judge had told me, her eyes crinkling warmly. Keep developing it. After the ceremony, my father squeezed my shoulder. That was impressive, kiddo. It certainly was, Mom agreed, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Though I hope you understand this is a hobby, Olivia. Something fun, but not a future. In the car driving home, I clutched my ribbon and certificate, still floating on the high of recognition. Ms. Abernathy said I could apply for a summer art program at the museum, I ventured. She said they sometimes offer scholarships. Mom's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Let's be practical, Olivia. Summer is for getting ahead in math and science. You're already behind Melissa in algebra, and she's a year younger. But I got an A in math, I protested. An A isn't excellent. It's expected, Mom replied, her tone making it clear the discussion was over. Later that evening, when Melissa came over with her parents, Mom pulled out my winning painting to show them. Isn't this lovely? Melissa, you should try art classes too. I'm more into soccer, Melissa had shrugged, disinterested. Well, Olivia can teach you sometime, Mom said. Sharing talents is what family does. The following week, Mom enrolled Melissa in private art lessons with a renowned local artist. My request for the same lessons was met with a practical smile. The community center classes are perfectly adequate for recreational painting, Olivia. Besides, Melissa needs the extra help to develop her potential. I never told anyone how I would sneak into Melissa's room during family gatherings to look at her artwork, mediocre at best, abandoned after a few months, while the expensive brushes and paints given to her gathered dust. Years later, when I was 16, I found myself helping Melissa with her art homework. She was struggling with a perspective drawing, and I took over, finishing it for her while she texted her friends. Wow, that's actually good, she said, sounding surprised. You should do mine more often. Maybe you could tell your mom you don't actually like art, I suggested, putting the final touches on what would undoubtedly earn her an A. Melissa looked genuinely confused. But Aunt Evelyn says I'm creative. She's always saying I have potential. Do you even enjoy it? She shrugged. Not really. But it looks good on college applications to be well-rounded. She took the drawing, already losing interest. Thanks for this. Want to see what I'm wearing to Jason Miller's party? I wasn't invited to Jason Miller's party. I never was. At the condo, that night, after hours of angry packing and ignored calls from Melissa about paint samples, I sat in my soon-to-be former living room. The space I'd lovingly cultivated over 3 years, my first real home, my sanctuary, my promise of stability, was being ripped away because someone else deserved it more. I wrapped my favorite mug in newspaper, remembering how I'd splurged on the handmade pottery set when I landed my first major design client. You're investing in dishes when you should be saving for retirement, Mom had commented when she saw them. But they were more than dishes to me. They were a celebration of independence, of creating a life on my own terms. My laptop glowed in the darkness as I navigated to the city's housing department website. The anonymous complaint form was simple enough to fill out. I hesitated for just a moment, my finger hovering over the submit button. Was I going too far? My mother's voice echoed in my mind. Family helps family. Except that had never included me, had it? I was family when they needed someone responsible, someone to handle the difficult tasks, someone to make sacrifices. But when it came to receiving help, to being prioritized, to having my dreams supported, suddenly family meant Melissa. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Melissa's thinking of painting the living room sage green. You always did make questionable color choices. The casual cruelty of it, The dismissal of my taste, my efforts, my very presence in this space made my decision easy. The fresh wave of anger that washed over me crystallized my resolve. My fingers flew across the keyboard, detailing the illegal basement apartment, the unauthorized electrical work, the multiple building code violations I'd noticed over the years. I hit submit on the complaint form. Within seconds, an automated email arrived. Inspector Daniel Wilson will contact you within 24 hours to discuss your report. Another text from Mom followed. Don't forget to leave the spare keys when you go. Melissa needs them for the contractor. I smiled for the first time that day, typing my phone number into the contact information field. The inspector would need someone to let them in, after all, someone who knew exactly where to look. Of course, Mom, I texted back. I wouldn't want to make things difficult for family. As I set down my phone, I realized my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a strange mixture of anger and liberation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to silently accept whatever injustice was handed to me. For the first time, I was fighting back. With Sophia, remember when you won that art competition in high school? Sophia asked the next day, helping me pack my books into boxes. My best friend since college, she'd rushed over as soon as I called with the news. And your mom just said, that's nice, while making a huge deal about Melissa's participation trophy in soccer. Third place in a state competition versus participation in junior varsity, I muttered, carefully wrapping a photo frame in bubble wrap. The image inside showed me at my first gallery showing, a small local exhibition, but a meaningful milestone that neither of my parents had attended because it conflicted with Melissa's bank promotion party. But Melissa had real potential, Sophia mocked, mimicking my mother's tone perfectly. Sophia had been the first person to really see the pattern. We met in college, where I was studying graphic design after giving up on art school, a compromise my mother had reluctantly accepted as at least practical. Sophia was studying journalism, fearless and outspoken in a way I'd never been allowed to be. You know what's crazy? She'd said after meeting my family for the first time. How they talk to you versus how they talk to Melissa. It's like you're the hired help and she's visiting royalty. I'd laughed it off then, used to the dynamic. But Sophia had kept pointing it out, making me see what I normalized. God, that Christmas when I got self-help books while she got a MacBook. I paused, a memory hitting me like a slap. You know what Mom told me that year? Melissa needs the computer for college applications. You just draw all day, you can use the library computers. Sophia dropped the packing tape. That's messed up. And now they're just giving her your home. Their home, I corrected automatically. They never let me forget who owned it. Sophia gave me a look, the same one she'd been giving me for years whenever I reflexively diminished myself. You've been paying rent. You've been maintaining it. You made it yours. My phone buzzed with another text from Melissa. The bathroom tiles are so dated. Think I'll gut it completely. I showed Sophia the message. I installed those tiles myself last summer. Spent my entire savings on the renovation. Screw them, Sophia declared, grabbing her car keys. Come on, we're taking a drive. 20 minutes later, we parked across from my parents' house. The basement tenant's car was gone. They always worked late on Thursdays. Look, I pointed to the carefully concealed separate entrance. Dad built that himself. No permits, no inspections. The electric meters rigged too. My father had always been handy, proud of his ability to fix anything. What I realized later was that fixing often meant cutting corners, avoiding regulations, doing things under the table. When I was 14, I'd helped him install the separate entrance to the basement, thinking it was going to be a rec room. A month later, I discovered they were renting it out. You can't tell anyone, Dad had said, looking worried. It helps with the mortgage. I kept their secret, like I kept all their secrets. Even when they claimed they couldn't help with my college tuition because times were tight, while the rental income continued to flow in. Sophia pulled out her phone. Perfect lighting for photos. The housing department will love these. I watched her document everything, a knot forming in my stomach. What if I'm going too far? Too far. Like when your mom told you art school was a waste but paid Melissa's entire college tuition? Or when they promised you could buy this condo but sold it behind your back. Sophia turned to me, her journalist passion for justice flaring in her eyes. They're making their own karma here, Liv. My phone rang, a block number. I answered, heart pounding. This is Daniel Wilson from the City Housing Department, a deep voice said. I'm calling about an anonymous complaint regarding an illegal rental unit. I looked at the house where I'd never been good enough, where Melissa had been crowned princess while I was told to be practical, realistic, less dramatic. Yes, I said clearly. I have some information you might find interesting. Flashback, 16 years old, but I already applied, I said, confusion making my voice thin. I mailed the applications myself. Mom sighed, setting down the rejection letter from the Art Institute. I'm sorry, Olivia, but perhaps this is for the best. Art school is expensive and the career prospects are limited. I stared at the letter, something not quite making sense. But my portfolio, Professor Henley said it was exceptional. He wrote my recommendation. Talent isn't everything. Dad interjected gently. Security matters too. I looked at them both, a strange suspicion forming. Can I see the envelope this came in? I already threw it away, Mom said quickly. No use dwelling on disappointments. That night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. She'll get over it, Mom was saying. Better she focuses on something practical. Melissa's applying to business school, and look how excited she is about her future. But Evelyn, if art is what she loves, James, be realistic. We can't support her forever if she chooses some bohemian lifestyle. The Reynolds name means something in this community. I never told them I called the Art Institute the next day, only to discover they had no record of my application ever arriving. 4 acceptance letters went missing that spring, all to art schools, all somehow rejected, with letters that arrived while I was at school, all mysteriously disposed of before I could examine them closely. I ended up at the State University, studying graphic design. At least it's marketable, my mother had said, finally agreeing to help with tuition. Melissa, meanwhile, received a full ride to her business school of choice, courtesy of my parents. She's going to go so far, Mom had gushed at her graduation party. A natural leader. I sat in the corner at that party, nursing a drink, watching Melissa hold court among her friends. She was charming, I had to admit. People were drawn to her confidence, her easy laugh, her way of making everyone feel special for a moment before moving on to someone more interesting. You could be more like her, you know, Mom said, appearing beside me. If you made more of an effort. I'm not her, I replied. No, Mom agreed, watching Melissa with a strange, hungry pride. You're not. It was the closest she'd ever come to saying what I'd always suspected, that Melissa was the daughter she wished she'd had. The discovery. These walls are so dingy, Melissa announced, running her manicured fingers along the freshly painted surface I'd finished just last month. And this light fixture, so basic. I continued wrapping my dishes in newspaper, counting backward from 10. The sooner I packed, the sooner I could escape her impromptu renovation consultation. 3 more weeks of this torture before I could leave. Melissa had always been like this, casually dismissive of anything I valued, certain that her taste was superior. As children, she'd reorganize my toys during visits, explaining that her way was better. In high school, she'd offer to help me with my makeup, saying that I had potential if you just try. In college, she'd send me links to internships that were more realistic than the design studios I was applying to. Always helping. Always improving. Always making it clear that I wasn't quite enough as I was. Oh my God, what's this? She pulled my childhood scrapbook from a shelf. How cute, you kept all this old stuff. Put that down. I reached for it, but she danced away, flipping the pages. Oh, look at these drawings. Remember when you thought you'd be a famous artist? She laughed. Thank God Aunt Evelyn talked sense into you. The scrapbook slipped from her hands, spilling loose papers across the floor. Among them, a yellowed envelope caught my eye, partially burned around the edges. Oops, sorry, not sorry, Melissa chirped, already distracted by measuring the windows for real curtains, not these cheap things. I waited until she moved to the kitchen before snatching up the envelope. Inside was a letter in my late Aunt Elizabeth's handwriting, Melissa's mother who had died when we were teenagers. Elizabeth had been different from the rest of the family, warm, creative, encouraging of my art. Her death from cancer when I was 14 had left a void in my life that nothing had filled. Dearest Evelyn, the letter began. I know what you did with Mother's will, how you convinced James to help you change. My hands trembled as I skimmed the rest, accusations of forgery, of redirecting inheritance, of systematically ensuring that Elizabeth's daughter would receive less than her fair share. The letter ended with a threat. If you don't make this right, I'll take legal action, sister or not. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. Olivia, it's Uncle Robert. I hadn't heard from Mom's brother in years. They'd had some falling out before Aunt Elizabeth died. I heard about the condo situation, he said. History repeating itself, isn't it? What do you mean? Your mother pulled the same trick with your grandmother's will, changed the terms after Elizabeth died, made everything pass through James first. Melissa wasn't supposed to get anything special. Neither was Evelyn. My hand shook. How do you know this? Because Elizabeth found out. That letter she wrote, the one Evelyn tried to burn, it explains everything. I've been gathering proof for years. In the kitchen, Melissa was fast-timing her designer. The counters have to go, and that tacky backsplash. I have the letter, I said quietly. It survived. Silence on the line. Then keep it safe. Things are about to get interesting for your mother. After hanging up, I slipped the letter into my bag, my mind racing. This wasn't just about the condo anymore. This was about years, decades of manipulation and lies. About a pattern of behavior that had shaped all our lives. For the first time, I saw clearly what I'd only glimpsed before. My mother's treatment of me wasn't just favoring Melissa. It was strategic, keeping me practical, responsible, deferential, while giving Melissa everything, ensured that I would never challenge the system she created. And now I had proof that it went back even further than I knew. The investigation deepens. The next week passed in a blur of packing and planning. Inspector Wilson confirmed that an inspection of my parents' house was scheduled, and I provided detailed information about the illegal rental unit. Meanwhile, Uncle Robert put me in touch with his lawyer, Marcus, who began gathering documentation about the will tampering. Your Aunt Elizabeth suspected something was wrong with your grandmother's will, Marcus explained during our first meeting. The original terms specified that her estate should be divided equally among her children, but somehow everything passed through your father first, allowing your mother to effectively control the distribution. Why didn't Elizabeth contest it back then? I asked. She did, but she fell ill shortly after. By the time she realized how serious her condition was, she was focused on her daughter's future, not legal battles. She wrote that letter to your mother as a last attempt to make things right. And Mom tried to burn it, I said, remembering the charred edges. Marcus nodded. Your Uncle Robert has been building this case slowly, gathering evidence. With Elizabeth's letter now in hand, we have a much stronger position. I hesitated, the weight of what we were doing suddenly hitting me. This could destroy them, my parents, Melissa. They've made their choices, Marcus said gently. The question is, what choice will you make now? Confrontation. The courthouse steps felt like a stage with Mom, Dad, and Melissa huddled on one side while Uncle Robert's lawyer spread documents across his briefcase on the other. I watched my mother from across the hall, noticing for the first time how fragile she seemed beneath her perfect exterior. Her eyes darted nervously, her hand repeatedly smoothing her already immaculate hair, gestures of anxiety I'd rarely seen from her. Had she always been this scared beneath her confidence? Had her treatment of me been driven by her own insecurities, her own fears of not measuring up? For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered all the dreams she'd crushed, all the ways she'd diminished me while elevating Melissa. Whatever her reasons, the damage was real. The will tampering is clear, Marcus explained, pointing to highlighted sections. Your mother altered dates, forged signatures, and redirected assets through your father's name to avoid inheritance tax. That's a lie. Mom's voice echoed through the hallway. Olivia, stop this madness. Melissa stormed over, mascara streaking down her face. The bank suspended my mortgage. I'm going to lose everything. Her panic was real, and again I felt that momentary pang of empathy. Melissa had been taught her whole life that she deserved special treatment, that she was entitled to the best of everything. She'd never had to face consequences before. In many ways, she was as much a victim of my mother's manipulations as I was, shaped into a person who couldn't conceive of not getting exactly what she wanted. Like I lost my home? I kept my voice steady. The one you just had to have? You didn't deserve it. You're just an artist, a dreamer. I have a real career, a career built on fraud, Marcus interjected, pulling out more papers. Your mortgage application lists rental income that never existed. That's federal fraud, Miss Davis. Melissa's perfect facade cracked. Aunt Evelyn said it was fine. She said she'd cover the payments until what? I asked. Until you finish destroying everything I built? Order in the hallway, a bailiff approached. Court's about to begin. Inside, the judge reviewed the documentation with increasing concern. I sat beside Uncle Robert, feeling strangely calm. Whatever happened now, the truth was finally coming out. Mom kept trying to catch my eye, mouthing, please, over and over. I recognized the look. It was the same one she'd used whenever she needed me to be the reasonable one, to clean up messes, to make sacrifices for family harmony. Mrs. Reynolds, the judge finally spoke. These allegations are serious: will tampering, mortgage fraud, illegal rental income. It was for family. Mom stood up. Everything I did was to protect. To protect who? Uncle Robert interrupted from the gallery. My sister Elizabeth's will was clear. The properties were to be divided equally. You changed that, didn't you? Elizabeth didn't understand. Melissa needed what? I turned to face her. To be handed everything while I got nothing? To steal my home because you decided she deserved it more? I made you stronger. Mom shouted, her composure finally shattering completely. Everything I did made you independent, while Melissa what? The judge's voice cut through. Committed mortgage fraud under your guidance? Melissa burst into tears. I can't lose my house. My followers are expecting a renovation series. Even now, even here, her concerns were about appearances, about the image she projected to others. It struck me then how much alike she and my mother truly were, both obsessed with surfaces, with the impression they made on the world, with status and perception over substance. It was never your house, I said quietly. Just like it was never really mine. The judge cleared his throat. Given the evidence, I'm freezing all assets pending investigation. Mrs. Reynolds, you'll need criminal defense counsel. Dad finally spoke up. We used the rental income for Melissa's mortgage. Without it, Marcus added, both properties are subject to immediate review for fraud. Mom collapsed into her chair. Olivia, please. We can fix this. I thought about all the times she'd said that, when she lost my art school acceptance letters, when she gave Melissa my college fund, when she sold my home without warning. Always assuming I would fall in line, always expecting me to accept whatever scraps were offered. No, Mom. You can't fix karma. Melissa lunged toward me, her designer bag swinging wildly. You vindictive bitch. You've ruined everything. The bailiff intercepted her as Uncle Robert stood protectively beside me. Should I tell them about Sarah's last letter, Evelyn? The one you tried to burn? He asked calmly. Mom went pale. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, he said. You played favorites until it became fraud. Now you're facing the consequences. The judge banged his gavel. Properties frozen, assets held pending criminal investigation. Next hearing in 30 days. Outside the courtroom, Melissa was having a full meltdown on the steps, live streaming to her followers about family betrayal. I watched her performance with a strange detachment. How had I spent my entire life feeling inferior to someone so utterly incapable of handling real adversity? The bank wants their down payment back, Dad said hollowly, approaching me as I waited for Uncle Robert. We don't have it. You had 15 years of illegal rental income, I reminded him. Where did it all go? He looked away, shoulders slumped. Ask your mother. She handled everything. This was his pattern: passive, avoiding responsibility, letting mom make all the decisions while he hid behind paperwork and projects. I'd inherited his artistic eye, but had fought hard against adopting his spine of jelly. Mom stood alone at the bottom of the courthouse steps, her perfect image finally shattered. When she saw me watching, she came over, her desperation palpable. I only wanted what was best for Melissa, she said, as if that explained everything. I finished her sentence. Never for me. I made you strong, she insisted, reaching for my arm. Look how well you survived. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. No, Mom. You made me angry. There's a difference. My phone buzzed, Sophia sending support from London, where she'd recently moved for a new job. Behind me, Marcus was already discussing next steps with Uncle Robert. The criminal investigation would start tomorrow. Get a lawyer, Marcus told my mother without looking up from his notes. Melissa's wails echoed off the courthouse walls. My followers trusted me. My brand is ruined. I walked away as Mom called after me. Olivia, you can't leave us like this. Watch me, I said, not turning back. Uncle Robert caught up with me at my car. Elizabeth would be proud of you, he said quietly. She always said you were the strong one, strong enough to survive them. I nodded, feeling the weight of the day settling on my shoulders. Strong enough to stop them too. My phone lit up with notifications. Melissa claiming she was being evicted, Mom saying the police wanted their financial records, Dad begging me to help fix everything. I deleted them all and drove to my small rental apartment where no one could take anything from me ever again. Behind me, Mom's carefully constructed dynasty crumbled under the weight of its own lies, while Melissa's perfect life dissolved into a series of desperate social media posts. Sometimes karma doesn't need help. Sometimes she just needs an audience. Flashback college years. You're really doing this? Sophia asked, helping me move into my dorm freshman year. Graphic design instead of fine arts? I arranged my desk, setting up the basic computer I'd saved for all through high school. Not a MacBook like Melissa's, just a functional machine that would run the design software. It's practical, I said, repeating my mother's words. Art is a hobby, not a career. Sophia frowned, picking up one of my sketchbooks. But you're so good, Liv. Like, seriously good. I shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Good doesn't pay bills. Later that night, after Sophia left, I sat alone in my half-unpacked room, looking at the course catalog. Against my better judgment, I'd picked up a fine arts elective, just one class, just for me. I wouldn't tell my parents. They were already unhappy about the design major, considering it barely a step above finger painting. Melissa has such a clear path, Mom had said during our last argument about my major. Business, finance, a real future. Why can't you think more practically? What I couldn't say then, what I'd never been able to say, was that I didn't want Melissa's path. I didn't want her life, her values, her priorities. I wanted my own. But every time I tried to forge it, invisible barriers appeared, courses suddenly full, applications mysteriously lost, opportunities withdrawn at the last minute. It wasn't until my junior year, when a professor specifically sought me out for a prestigious design internship, contacting me directly instead of through the university channels, that I began to suspect the extent of my mother's interference. We tried reaching you several times, the creative director told me. Someone kept saying you weren't interested. That internship changed everything. For the first time, I was in an environment where my aesthetic sensibility was valued, where my creativity was an asset, not a liability. I blossomed, earning a job offer before graduation. When I told my parents, Mom's response was immediate. Design is so unstable. Melissa just accepted a position at First National, benefits, retirement plan, clear advancement track. It was the first time I didn't cave to her disapproval. This is what I'm doing, I said firmly. Whether you support it or not. Her eyes had narrowed, assessing me like she would a troublesome property with foundation issues. We'll see how long that lasts. New beginnings. 3 months after the court hearing, the moving truck pulled away from my new apartment, leaving me alone with my boxes and the afternoon sun streaming through windows that were finally legally mine. The down payment had come from Uncle Robert's lawyer, my share of the recovered inheritance, plus interest. My phone buzzed with Martha's text. Turn on the local news. There was Mom being led out of their house in handcuffs, her tennis whites replaced by a shocked expression. The caption read, Local realtor arrested for multiple fraud charges. The defendant faces up to 15 years, the reporter announced, for charges including will tampering, mortgage fraud, and illegal rental income. I watched with a strange hollowness in my chest. Not satisfaction, not quite. Something more complex. Relief, perhaps. The relief of finally being believed. The relief of having the truth acknowledged after decades of gaslighting. Another text followed. Melissa's condo is listed for sale below market value. I switched to Instagram, where Melissa's perfectly curated life had devolved into desperate attempts to rebrand herself after the scandal. Her latest post showed her moving back in with Dad. Sometimes you have to rebuild from nothing, but blessed hash, authentic hash karma. The hashtags made me grimace. Even now, she was spinning, creating a narrative where she was the heroine of her own redemption story. I wondered if she believed it herself. The doorbell rang, Uncle Robert with a housewarming gift. Elizabeth's old art supplies, he said, setting down a familiar wooden box. Found them in Evelyn's attic. She kept everything she took from you. I opened the box with trembling hands, finding my old brushes, the expensive ones Mom had given to Melissa after declaring I didn't need fancy materials. The smell of the oil paints, still usable after all these years, brought back a rush of memories, the pure joy of creation I'd experienced before art became yet another battlefield in my family's war of favoritism. She really did plan it all, didn't she? I asked as my phone lit up with Dad calling. I answered on speaker. The house is being seized, he said quietly. Your mother's facing serious time. Melissa's being investigated for mortgage fraud. I should have stopped this years ago. But you didn't, I replied, my voice steady. You watched them tear me down and said nothing. I know. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, Olivia. For everything. The apology, so late in coming, didn't fill the void his silence had created over the years. But it was something, an acknowledgement, at least. What will you do now? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. Start over, I guess. At my age. He paused. Your mother. She wasn't always like this. After Melissa was born, something changed. She became obsessed with giving her everything, making sure she never struggled like we did early on. And what about me? I asked. Why was I the one who had to struggle? You were stronger, he said simply. You always were. It's not fair, it's not right. But that's why. I hung up as another text came through, Sophia sending a photo of her new London office. Miss you but so proud you finally broke their power over you. Uncle Robert helped me unpack the art supplies, setting up an easel by the window. Elizabeth always said you had the real talent. That's why Evelyn worked so hard to suppress it, because Melissa needed to be the special one, because you were already special without any of their help. I ran my fingers over the brushes, feeling a mixture of grief and gratitude. Grief for the years lost, for the path not taken, for the artist I might have become without interference. Gratitude for this second chance, this opportunity to reclaim what had been taken. Do you think I could still do it? I asked quietly. The art, I mean. I think, Uncle Robert said carefully, that it's never too late to become who you might have been. Epilogue is 6 months later. The gallery lights cast a warm glow over my paintings, a series I titled Inheritance, exploring themes of family, truth, and rediscovery. After months of intensive work, balancing my design clients with late nights at the easel, I produced enough pieces for a small exhibition at a local gallery. These are remarkable, the gallery owner had said, genuinely surprised by the maturity of work from an emerging artist in her 30s. The emotion is so raw, yet the technique is sophisticated. I hadn't told her the full story, how I'd spent decades suppressing this part of myself, how these paintings represented not just artistic expression but personal exorcism. Now, Watching strangers move from canvas to canvas, I felt a sense of completion I'd never experienced. Not vengeance, not triumph, but something quieter and more profound: authenticity. Did revenge fix everything? Uncle Robert asked softly as he prepared to leave the opening night event. No, I admitted, looking around at the crowded gallery. But the truth did. My phone buzzed in my purse, another text from Dad, who'd moved to a small apartment across town. We'd begun tentative conversations again, awkward and halting, but honest in a way we'd never been before. Mom, serving her first year of a reduced sentence after a plea deal, refused all contact. Melissa had rebranded herself yet again, this time as a wellness influencer focused on overcoming adversity. She never mentioned me or what happened, crafting a narrative where she was the victim of unspecified circumstances now triumphing through positive thinking. I put my phone away without responding. Some relationships couldn't be fixed, only released. Sophia arrived late, straight from the airport. "I can't believe you didn't wait for me to get back from London for your first show," she exclaimed, hugging me fiercely. "It's not exactly my first," I reminded her. "Just the first in a very long time." We walked through the exhibition together, Sophia appropriately impressed by the red indicating sales next to several pieces. "What's next?" she asked as we paused before the largest canvas, an abstract representation of a house of cards mid-collapse, rendered in shades of blue and gold. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I'm still figuring it out." And that was the gift in all of this: the freedom to figure it out myself, without the weight of others' expectations. To make mistakes, to change direction, to explore possibilities without having to justify my choices to anyone. I started painting again that night after everyone left, creating something new in a space that was truly mine. No more conditional help, no more family loyalty tests, no more watching Melissa take what was meant for me. Sometimes karma doesn't fix everything, but sometimes she gives you a clean canvas and says, "Now show them what you can really do." I picked up my brush and began to paint my own story.